So today I want to talk about aging, work, Caribbean women, and our reality. Because there's a lot to consider. How do we think of work as we age, as we go past 35, 40, and 50? Old age pensions are under threat in many of our Caribbean countries.
Do you aspire to an uncomplicated and fulfilling way of life? I'm Dianne Squires, aka Dianne. That's what all my friends call me. I'm an island woman living on the island of Barbados and walking my path to a big and simple life. Walk with me and learn with me. Welcome to the Island Woman Podcast.
Guess what? We are celebrating episode number 36 of the Island Woman podcast today. So that means we have done 3 seasons of 12 episodes each since March last year. And so thank you so much for sticking with the Island Woman podcast. I really am proud that we've gotten to 36 episodes. And of course, we plan to keep going. Now, 36 also means that we've gone past 35. And if I think about women specifically, when you jump over that milestone of 35, you kind of start to think about life a little differently. You now know that you're approaching 40, and after that comes 50, etc. You now know that most of your youth is behind you and you have a different perspective on life. I remember starting the first episode of the Island Woman podcast just after I had turned 50. In fact, my first ever episode was 50, Not Too Late to Change. Imagine between 36 and 50, the thinking of a woman, one, in terms of her reproductive capability and also her capacity for work. Her capacity for work, because that reproductive capacity is related to things like perimenopause and the things that come with that, but also her perspective on how the world of work is changing for her. Whether or not work really facilitates a woman who maybe wants to slow down a little bit more, who is now maybe considering aging parents and young adults who may not yet be launched into the world fully. So she has evolved. And she's thinking about work in a different way. Yes, she's at the prime of her career days for many, many women who are very fortunate to have that prime. But also, she's starting to think about, do I want to go at this pace for the next 15 years? And if the answer is yes, once I do reach 50, 15 years after 35, do I want to continue to go at that pace? Then she has to ask herself the question, what's the quality of life that I want to have after 50? What's the quality of life that I want to have at 60 or 65? And how will the work that I do now impact on that? So today I want to talk about aging, work, Caribbean women, and our reality, because there's a lot to consider. If we think of the demographics in the Caribbean, we have aging societies. And so it's expected that so many more of us are going to be dealing with long, long years, hopefully high quality. But are we considering whether we are working throughout those years and how we will support ourselves during those years? We are also living in societies where women are more likely to be unemployed than their male counterparts at different stages of their work life. And then we're living in societies where pensions, old age pensions, are under threat in many of our Caribbean countries. And according to one report that I read, it's thought that some of these will be depleted within 10 to 20 years. And then there's youth unemployment, which is systemically high in the region and usually higher than national unemployment rates. So where does all of this leave us as women who are over 35, who are over 40? And how does that relate to us being able to maximize our economic impact while we try to stay well? If you remember, women are at higher risk for noncommunicable diseases in the Caribbean, and that is the highest risk for death in the Caribbean. So if we think about ourselves as women, there's so many external, internal, family, community, so many factors that impact on our ability to be able to maximize that economic impact and to stay well. So how do we think about work, which is the major source of income for most of us, and the major source or the major way that we will have economic impact in our lifetime? How do we think of work as we age, as we go past 35, 40, and 50? And for those people in my audience who are younger than that, listen carefully because these are the things that you will be considering in not too long. Time can fly. So, as I was reflecting on this topic or what I would talk about for this topic, I was also thinking of what I am trying to avoid in my own life, and that is to stay in places that I've outgrown. And once you have been in the workforce for some period of time, and especially as you start to reach your 40s and 50s, many women start to consider whether or not they've outgrown the positions that they have been in, whether or not they've outgrown the roles that they've played in work life, whether that is still a fit. Just think of the analogy of wearing shoes that are too tight. Who wants to walk around in pain all the time? And for what? Sometimes the shoes aren't even that attractive. So it's the same way so many women, like I did when I was back in the corporate world, started to think, is this still a fit for me? Will this work as I go on to 45 and 50 and past that? What are the opportunities that I have now to maximize my economic impact, to play a different role, and to fit somewhere else? And that probably was the genesis for my philosophy of a big and simple life, a life that is allowed to expand in ambition, but somehow is able to pare it back enough so that you can execute it to the highest quality while you remain well. Knowing full well that as a Caribbean woman, especially over the age of 50, the statistics tell me that I'm more prone or more likely to suffer from some kind of noncommunicable disease or to be at risk of some factor that may lead to a noncommunicable disease like diabetes or some hypertension. And so these are the things that I considered when at 44, I resigned my corporate job. But I know that these are the things that people who are professionals, who have studied and been certified and have put in the work and have done numerous qualifications and so on to stay at the top of their game. I know because I talk to these women that we're all considering some of the same things. How can I stay at the top of my game, but in a different way? How do I do work over 35, over 40, and over 50 so that I'm not only satisfied financially, but I feel fulfilled and I feel well? That I give myself the time and the space to exercise, to take care of my body, to eat well. And that certainly I have the financial means to do that. I have chosen the entrepreneurial route, which I can tell you is not an easy one. But others are thinking about, what as a professional do I have to do to lay the groundwork for a life that feels like a better fit into the future? And so, with all those realities at play for us as Caribbean women, I think it's still extremely important for us to think about how we can maximize our economic impact and how we can stay well. After all, we know that the statistic that I have been quoting all season long, we know that for a 10-year period as recorded by the Inter-American Development Bank, women in Latin America and the Caribbean, we were the ones who were responsible as our incomes grew for a 30% reduction in poverty. And so we know that we contribute more to health and education and community-wide development when we are earning more. But we also know that we have to protect our health and our well-being in order to do so. So what are the options that we have for work as we age? Well, immediately somebody's going to say to me, think of technology and remote work and digital skills. We have the option to do those things. They don't require us to get into the traffic rush. They don't require us to have to come home every night and prepare for the next day in the same way as we would if we were doing the 9 to 5 commute. Absolutely, I say yes. But this is my question. When we are over 35, over 40, and over 50, how willing are we? This is a genuine question for all you ladies out there. How willing are we to learn new skills? How willing are we to Take it right back to the studs, as the Americans would say. Peel it all the way back and learn something new so that we can earn in a different way. Are you willing? I've had to learn many new things throughout my career because, as I have probably many times on this podcast alone talked about my different career transitions, I've had to learn new things. And it does take a lot of energy to do that. Are we willing and able to start to learn new things? And are we open enough with ourselves to do that? Genuine questions. Another question that I have for you, because I have a list of questions here, just for us to really ask ourselves and be honest. How physically demanding do we want our jobs to be? After 35, after 40, after 45, after 50. Many of us, I mean, I was in a corporate job where you might think it was not physically demanding because it was corporate and you would assume that that means office work. But I worked in marketing and communications in corporate, and often that meant being on site at some activation where you were erecting a table or overseeing the erection of a tent, or you were yourself helping with putting up that tent just because of the number of hands that you had access to. You were putting up banners, you were doing some kind of a setup for an event, and you were plowing in and putting your hand in the mix just so that things could get done. It was physical. You were traveling from one place to the next. So obviously then you're getting up, you're sitting down, you are walking many steps, you are sometimes rushing. Not all of it is just sitting at a desk. And then when it comes to sitting at a desk, is the sedentary work really any good for us? So when we are over 35, over 40, over 45, over 50, do we want to do sedentary work? What do we want that work to look like? And how do we want to do it so that we are maximizing our economic impact? What do we want that work to look like as we age? How many days per week do we want to do that work? How many hours of each day do we want to do that work? How much physical versus sedentary activity do we want to do for that work? Are we willing to lean into the existing skills that we have to really master them and transfer that into the work that we see ourselves doing? Are we willing to learn completely new skills in order to translate that into the new work that we could be doing? Now, I can tell you that this is what I'm doing or how I am thinking about it. I am thinking about all the skills that I have, what those skills mean on the whole for what I can bring to any table, and how I can use them, how I can charge for them. And I know my friend Kim Butcher, who was on episode 2 of this season. So you can go back to that episode, which is, I think, called Vex Money. She has a belief that you use all of your skills and talents to be able to earn money. And then so you get used to earning income from several different areas of your life rather than thinking solely of the job that you used to do or the job that you currently do. You think of all your skills on the whole. So for me, I was a dancer and I was a choreographer. What are the possibilities for me to continue to do choreography or to advise on the arts as I grow older and earn income from that? I obviously have been in marketing communications. What are the possibilities for me to continue my work in that area, both in advisory roles and execution type roles? I also love fitness and I'm keen to learn so much more about how the body works and how you can maximize the potential of the physical body. Am I willing to maybe do the additional studies to maximize on that part of my interest and to earn income from that? So just thinking of ways where your creativity, your skills, your interests can all come together to offer you opportunities for work as you age. Not only that you like, but you can find a way to manage outside of your regular, whether it was a factory job, a corporate job, a job in one of the professions like accounting or medicine or nursing or any of these professions. What's your total skill range? Are you great with art? Would you create something from your art and make that monetizable? I think that is extremely important, not just for women, by the way, but I think women are a main group that we have to consider just because of all of those factors that I talked about earlier. How are we going to tackle work as we age? Because if we're going to survive, if we're going to have a high quality of life, if we're going to be able to contribute to private pensions, which it seems we have to do, it's almost no longer an option because national old age pensions, as I said, they're under threat. Contribute to private pensions, take care of older parents, still contribute to young adults in our lives who may not be working or who may be working infrequently. How do we do all of those things without some sources of income, without work? These are the questions that I want to leave you with because I feel like this is the way to round out this season. There is a lot happening in the Caribbean. There are a lot of opportunities for us to start our skill building, for us to start thinking differently about work, life, and what we contribute and how we contribute. And to stop, I think, thinking of ourselves as just cogs in a wheel of some kind of a workforce machinery, but to think of ourselves as people who are contributing to society in new ways and who have options. I think one of the big misconceptions for us, because we've been born into this work culture where you are kind of like that factory worker, no matter if you work in corporate or in a factory. But the idea that these many hands to make a machine and to get things off the conveyor belt line, is that really the way we should be thinking about work for ourselves now? And is that the kind of work that will help us to continue to work longer as we age? Because the truth is, for many of us, we will have to work longer if we want to earn, and if we want to earn our keep. There may be nobody else there to do it for us. Remember, the younger people are still struggling for work. And by the time they're out of their struggle, hopefully, we've lost out on many years of quality living. So my wish for us in the Caribbean as women is that we start to think about work differently. We open our minds to the idea of working stronger for longer. And that doesn't mean working under duress. And that doesn't mean working till you drop, but that we think of ways where we can truly maximize not only our economic impact, but maximize our well-being. Let's think of these things together. I know I have more questions than answers, but this is certainly the life that I'm working towards. That big and simple life. So that's it for episode number 36, which is episode 12, season 3 of the Island Woman podcast. I'm Dianne Squires, aka Dianne. Until next time, I really wish you very well. If you've enjoyed this episode on the audio channels, leave a review. If you've enjoyed this on YouTube, leave us a thumbs up. Give us a comment or do both. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, next season, peace.